Talking back tonight, a couple of weeks ago, news.com.au launched its Real Heroes Walk Away campaign against one-punch random violence that ends in tragedy in many cases these days. One man who showed his support for the campaign when it launched was Anthony Perosh, one of Australia's best ever mixed martial artists in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Anthony joins me on Talking Back the Night. Welcome to the show, mate. Even before the launch of the Real Heroes Walk Away campaign, these one-punch attacks and sometimes tragic random assaults on the street, did it seem to you like these things were being reported about and going on more and more of late?
It did seem a lot more. Like, I remember, just going back a little bit, I used to be a bouncer for 10 years, and back then it didn't happen. It did happen, but it just seems to be, on the news a lot more frequently, like either fortnightly or monthly. It just seems to be a growing trend.
Anthony, you're a trained and highly skilled martial artist who fights for a living. What does a guy like you think when you hear about blokes, often drunk, carrying on with these sort of vicious assaults and attacks out on the street?
It's a shame. Like, I always say that that's why martial arts is great. The more you train martial arts, and the less you actually look for fights on the street. You want to compete more, but it's amazing how you kind of stay away from the danger. But I think personally, I think it's a bit of everything. It's coming from the bottom and the top. The bottom in terms of they're not getting the same education from parents, and the top, the law, with the current law, they get away with it. I feel real sorry for the police today, because they might arrest someone, and then the next day they're out. And I think, I'm really big on accountability, and I think there's a growing increase in violence is because they know they can get away with it.
Anthony, I've heard it said a lot lately that things like violent video games and violent movies are giving young guys bad ideas, but also that your sport, MMA and the UFC, which gets so much coverage now here in Australia, is also showing young men or exposing young guys to two people in a cage whose main objective is to knock the other guy out, and you've got 15,000 people cheering and clapping. I mean, could you accept that maybe things like the UFC and this kind of violence are triggering certain blokes off?
I'm going to say no, because it's like saying, like going to a different example, it's like saying, heavy metal music makes you want to kill yourself. I think you're really just trying to connect the dots in the wrong way. Look at mixed martial arts. No one looks at the big picture. Look at what happens pretty much 99.9% of the time when a match finishes. What happens? The two fighters hug each other. They say, great match, and then they wait for the decision if there has to be a decision. So I really think, people are clutching at straws, trying to link MMA or violent video games to increasing violence. It comes down to how you were brought up as a person by your parents, and number two, is the law out there? Like, when I was growing up, I was scared of the police. Every time you saw them, you automatically you went up like, am I doing anything wrong type thing. But now it's like people can get away with it. So me, I think the reason there's increase in violence is not because of MMA, not because of violent video games. It's because how they're brought up, and also that they can get away with it.
Now, Anthony, before I let you go, what's going on as far as your career in the UFC? When can fight fans expect to see you back in the octagon again?
Well, I had a bit of a setback. I was on 3 wins in a row, and then lost, by knockout last month, which was a bit disappointing. But life goes on. Have to get back on the horse. I'm just waiting now, playing the waiting game, waiting for the matchmaker to give me my next match. But I'm hoping to be back in the cage to fight November or December.
Anthony Perosh, one of Australia's greatest ever mixed martial artists. Appreciate your time tonight on Talking Back the Night, and also the message that you're sending out there that real heroes do walk away. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Back with more on Talking Back the Night in just a moment. Thinking